Hello Year 10, bit of an in-depth video on how agribusiness differs from organic farming and how it could help us to answer the following question, which will be the focus of our last part of the lesson: explain how environmentally friendly one method to improve food production is. It's worth 4 marks, and I'm going to go straight into a little PowerPoint on how these two things differ, and as well as that, how improving food production through these things, how that's going to lead to problems or the opposite, solutions to making food production environmentally friendly. So agribusiness is the first one, so you can take the name of that down. And agribusiness is basically large commercial farming that is business-run agriculture. Businesses like farming of meat, farming of a lot of crops, or one particular crop mostly, because they want to make sure that they can maximize the amount of that produce that they're getting from the land, or maximize the amount of meat that they're producing from that specific animal. Reasons why they might only produce one particular animal: because they don't want to have a couple of animals that could, let's say, spread one disease to the other type of animal that animal might not necessarily pick up from naturally. So they would want to contain that one animal in their production facilities as much as they possibly could. So you can see that one of the features here is obviously cramped conditions. Cramped conditions are going to be a big problem for these animals, but we'll see that later on. The reason why it's done here is because it's cheaper. Okay, so you can see that we are maximizing the amount of space by penning in these little cages as many pigs as possible. Another thing that we do with these pigs is that we have them connected to a drip, which will give them, as if you were in the hospital and you had been admitted to A&E, a little kind of cannula into them, and then that drip feeds whatever medicine they need, or maybe they're dehydrated, they need to drip feed water into them, obviously in an unnatural way, because that wouldn't normally happen. And that would be to stop the diseases killing them that might spread through these cramped conditions. Think about when we learned about slums, and slums, people living in very cramped conditions, led to them spreading diseases to each other, even though we're all human. Markings for slaughter put down on these animals. This might be a marking suggesting that they've reached the weight that they should aim to be at, so that at that point they can be slaughtered, so that they're not too overweight that would lead to any maybe health problems that might pollute or damage the meat. And that means that we know that this is the particular row of animals that can now be killed and produced into some form of, let's say, pork meal. And then the amount of waste that is produced by this business is quite staggering. If you look at that picture, the large area, if that's the factories in the background here behind the word waste, a massive amount of waste, the length of the factories, which makes sense, polluting either a natural green space, or in this case potentially a river that is turning the river a completely different colour. It could be the amount of fertilizers or herbicides or pesticides that they use to make sure that the feed is not polluted or damaged by any dangerous weeds or other plants or vegetation. So that waste is not really taking into consideration the environment, nor are the cramped conditions, the markings for slaughter, or the antibiotics that are being fed to those animals. And overall, all of these things contribute to the cheapness of the agribusiness. It means that we maximize space, reduce the amount that we have to spend on rent, that we can use that in other ways to make more money, for example, maybe on the transportation of our products to a warehouse, and so on and so forth, further down the food supply chain that we've mentioned in our starter task earlier on in the lesson. Now, what are we comparing this to? We've got organic farming here, and it's a picture of a clear difference of how these animals are being treated. And the animals in this picture would obviously be offered a much greater space. You can see they all have their own little pen, but much greater space that they would have gotten in that factory that we saw in the previous image. You can see that the products are going to be a little bit more expensive. So actually that could have a bit of an issue, create a bit of an issue for maybe less wealthy people. So it's mainly going to be for people who are on middle incomes to higher incomes. It's going to lead to a lower crop yield, and overall it's going to be something that will be more environmentally sustainable, but it's definitely something that might not necessarily increase food production as much. So you're comparing these two things together. What you're going to do after that is you're going to go and complete the 3 questions on this slide. I will explain those things after the video has ended, once the slide is loaded, and I will be floating around to help with any answers that you might have to questions that you might have. So best of luck with that, and I will talk to you later after this video stops.